Monet is certainly the most famous impressionist. He found a very unique way of painting the world, not actually painting things, but representing color impressions of light. Basically, the canvas for Monet was acting sort of like the retina that's stimulated by light to create the visual impression of color. And at the time, this approach was absolutely revolutionary. But did you know that later in his life, his failing sight made it almost impossible for him to paint and might have transformed his work and maybe the world of art altogether? Let's talk about this. Monet was famous for experimenting with light, and he was famous for painting the same subjects multiple times to see how light can affect the various colors of the world and how the visual impressions of colors are affected by light, by the time of the day, by the weather, by the season. He did a lot of the same subjects multiple times in his garden in Giverny. And this is a great way to see how his sight was affected. Monet, around the 1910s, started to develop cataract on both eyes. So basically, if you see me like this is what you would see with the cataract that Monet had. You can see that it makes everything very brownish, it makes everything sort of yellow, and it makes everything also sort of blurry. It makes it hard to really find and see details very carefully. So now let's look at the paintings. This is a painting from the early 1910s, and you can see that the greens are still relatively green, the blues are also relatively blue, and everything pretty much looks very realistic. There's still a sense of details, and there's still a lot of subtlety in how the colors are used and how the colors are applied. This painting is the same subject around the same time. You can see how Monet was very aware of the changes in color depending on the time of the day, depending on the weather. This was painted before he started really having a very strong cataract. So you can still see a lot of subtlety, a lot of research. And now, this is at a time when he started to have cataract. So now, this was painting during the war, and maybe he was trying to convey the sense of sorrow. So, well, maybe we can say that this was intentional, but at this time already, his sight was affected. Now you can see that on this one, everything starts to look more abstract, and everything is very blue, but there's a strong yellow undertone in this. Where does it come from? Well, might have come from his cataract. You see that the details are not rendered as they used to be. Maybe it's a style, maybe it's a choice, but we know from the notes, we know from his own words that he could not see the details anymore. So this is a view of the famous bridge in Giverny in his garden. So now let's say that you have the sort of cataract that Monet had. Well, it would look something like this. Well, this is probably a little bit exaggerated, but later in his life, it was almost to this point. We can see that with paintings like this one. See how everything is blurry, how everything is red. And Monet was really not happy with this, and he actually destroyed many of these paintings. Basically, as an artist, if this affects you, you have two options. You can basically paint the world the way you see it, so everything will appear reddish, yellowish, brown. Everything will appear sort of blurry, or you can compensate. The thing about Monet is that he knew about this landscape. He knew it perfectly well. He knew how everything was supposed to be. So he could compensate. That's the second option. Compensate with visual memory. Basically, what he could do to neutralize this yellow tendency is use the opposite of yellow. What's the complementary color to yellow? It's a purple blue. So basically, by using more blue, more purple in his paint, it could compensate the effect of this disability, this cataract. And this is something that you see in many of Monet's painting at this time, that many of his paintings are shifting towards purple blue. You can say that this is an artistic style, this is a choice, but it might have been caused primarily by his cataract. But at some point, Monet's cataract became so tough that he had to undergo surgery. When you have eye surgery, you usually start with only one eye and see how it goes. So in 1923, he first had his right eye operated. So they removed the brownish layer that was covering his lens, and that gave him sort of the opposite effect. So he had one eye, the left eye, that was seeing everything brown, reddish brown, yellowish brown, and the right eye would see everything a lot more bluish, a lot more purple. So let's say that you're Monet and you're looking at your house like this. This is what the eye with cataract would see. And this is what the eye without cataract would see. And Monet actually painted several versions of this view. He painted this house with his left eye, unaffected by the surgery, with a very strong cataract, and the same house with the right eye that was not affected by the cataract, but was maybe seeing more blue and violet that was supposed to happen. Some people say that he could see a tiny bit of the range of the ultraviolet that you're not actually supposed to see. So now let's see how Monet kept working with this disability. Color was everything in Monet's life, so losing the sense of color was horrible. So before he had the surgery, this is how Monet kept working on this painting. First, he had to rely on his organization and his palette. He couldn't distinguish the tubes, he couldn't distinguish the pigments actually. Well, how do you know what's a blue and a green when your vision is messed up? Well, he had to rely on the labels on the tubes and the organization on his palette. So all the pigments had to be in the same order and it could not be touched. It had to be like this all the time. But it was not enough. So how do you do more than this? Well, your vision is blurry. You're seeing everything very yellowish and you can't work on details. What can you do? This is at this time that Monet had the idea to work on the Nymphéas, these huge canvases that are in the Museum of l'Orangerie in Paris. These huge canvases are a way to deal with the issues of details, because when you work on something this big, well, details are irrelevant. And you can see a strong blue undertone in all the paintings in Museum l'Orangerie. I don't know if it's an artistic style, an artistic choice, or if it was caused by the cataract, because Monet started working on these paintings before he had the surgery. Now, after the surgery, so Monet had surgery only on one eye because he didn't want to risk losing his eyesight completely, so he only had surgery on his right eye in 1923. And after this time, after the surgery, he he did a lot of things. He did a lot of retouching on many of the previous paintings. So he did, oh, this is bad, this color is bad. I finally got my vision back. Well, not perfect, but I finally have something to see colors differently. So he retouched a lot of the previous paintings. We don't know exactly what was retouched, what was kept intact, but we know one thing is that he did a lot of retouching. He also did a lot of destroying, and actually some of the very reddish paintings that we see are some that were saved, and not many were saved actually, but many were made and many were destroyed by Monet himself because he was really not happy with this. And that's how he kept painting until the end of his life. That's a true inspiration because, well, some of the paintings some of the Ninfea paintings are actually a great inspiration for artists all over the world. And knowing that Monet had this, we can call it disability, because for a painter it's really debilitating. And knowing that he had this is truly something inspirational, and that shows that anyone can push through difficult times. It was also time of the war. He lost members of his family. It was really a bad time for Monet, but he kept pushing, he kept painting, and that's a true inspiration. Alright guys, thank you for watching this video. As always, don't hesitate to like and subscribe. I'll see you for the next video, and until then, have fun painting. Bye.